controversial topic we're going to discuss over kind of a mini series. This is going to be part one of two, possibly three videos. I'm going to try to wrap it up in two regarding the 9mm versus 40. But I'm also going to delve into what caliber you should shoot. So it's kind of a mixed bag of things we're going to talk about. Today we're going to set the foundation, and then we're going to actually do some range work. I'm going to incorporate a drill, kind of a standard test that helps me determine if I can handle a round, a gun in self-defense type situations. It helps me feel, comfortable, and I've utilized this and I like it, and maybe you'll be able to implement it into your training as well. So 9 versus 40. We could also talk about 45 versus 9, 357 SIG, 22 long rifle is junk, people say, on and on and on. But it seems like 9 and 40 is where the largest discrepancy and debate lies. And that is because in 1986, after the Dade County shootout, the FBI decided that the 9mm was inadequate. Of course, we understand that the basis of that argument was silly because it was ball rounds that they were using at the time, not modern hollow points. But in their infinite wisdom, the FBI, they developed the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. And actually, they developed a 10mm, and they realized that that had probably too much pop for a lot of their smaller statured agents, so they cut the case length down, and lo and behold, the 40 Smith & Wesson. Now, before I go any further, two things. Number one, I love the 9mm and I believe in it. I carry Federal HST 124 grain standard pressure in my 9mm. They perform well out of short barrels. They perform well out of long barrels. It just doesn't matter. They are excellent in expansion and penetration, so I really like those. Number two, I don't understand the hatred for the 40 Smith & Wesson round. What I've got is a 165 grain Winchester PDX-1. I like the 165 grain because it's kind of a nice compromise between 124 and 180, but a little bit toward 180 gives me a little more velocity. It's moving at the same speed as the 9mm, so I like that round. But for people to hate the 40 Smith & Wesson round, it makes zero sense. And what I mean by that is, why would you hate an inanimate object? All this thing does is get placed into a magazine, pushed into a chamber, and fired. If you have a problem with the 40 Smith & Wesson or the perceived and sometimes real issues that guns have firing around, get ticked off at the manufacturers who built a 9mm gun and decided to chamber it in 40. Get mad at those people, not the round. It just doesn't make sense. Because I'll tell you what, guys, there's nothing wrong with the 40 Smith & Wesson round. It's a solid self-defense round. Law enforcement shootings over the years have proven it is effective. All right, so got the whiteboard behind me today, kind of taking a little different direction. So here we go. The top, law enforcement moving to 9mm. Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, first bullet point, cost. For the same reason that most shooters choose 9mm, it's cheaper to shoot. So as you can see, I've got a whiteboard behind me with some bullet points. And just to touch on a few things, like I said, we're going to lay the foundation today, and then the next part of this video is going to be some shooting, and we're going to work out some things on the range. I don't know if we'll need a part 3 or not. If we don't, I won't do it. If we can wrap it up in 2, fine. But let's go up to the top and let's look at the law enforcement moving to the 9mm. Several are abandoning the 40 Smith & Wesson for the 9mm. And there's a few reasons why. Number one, for the same reason that most of you guys shoot 9mm. Whether you like the 45 ACP or the 40 Smith & Wesson or 357 SIG, those are all more expensive than 9mm. And so it just makes sense. Even a lot of people who have 40 Smith & Wesson guns, like the M&P series and a Glock 23, a lot of people will put conversion barrels in them and then train with them like that because the 9mm is definitely less expensive. So it's going to be no different for law enforcement communities and law enforcement departments that have to budget. They can't just blow all of their money on anything they want. They have budgets, and And unfortunately, budget cuts in a lot of law enforcement agencies have forced them almost to go that route. So, and that's not saying the 9mm is more effective or the 40 or anything else. I'm just saying cost-wise, the 9mm performs well, and so it makes sense when you're talking about purchasing potentially thousands of rounds. Now, the second bullet point, PC, good old political correctness. There are many officers, whether they are small stature, they are females, or they just don't shoot enough, they can't qualify with the 40 Smith & Wesson round. Now, I personally believe that law enforcement should be required, and this isn't bashing officers. I love you guys. I appreciate the fact you put your life on the line for us day in and day out, but I believe that law enforcement officers should be held to a high physical standard. That includes strength training, conditioning, the ability to run an 8.5-minute mile on a drop of a dime. In other words, you drop your gun belt and you take off, put your tennis shoes on, and run a mile in 8.5 minutes. Unless you have some sort of a condition that keeps you at a desk job as an officer, you should be able to do that. And that's not that difficult. Not that difficult for a healthy, grown male. So we look at those two things, cost, and we look at political correctness. Again, there's female police officers. There are small statured males, and unfortunately, with the emasculation of the American male over the past X amount of years, we continually we lower our standards, and we've seen it even in the special ops in the military. We're opening it up for about everybody anymore instead of holding the standard way up here. And if you can't meet that standard, then you don't make it, period. It doesn't matter. This is the standard. If you don't make it, sorry. You're just not cut out for it. We all have our gifts, and we all have genetics, and we all have special things that we're capable of. Not everybody should be qualified to do things that other people can. So we move down to the second part, and this kind of ties into the first one also, the FBI influence. If the FBI came out next week and said the .22 long rifle is effective for killing bad guys, we've proven it over and over, and we've done ballistics tests, and it's as good as 9mm. I promise you, Ruger SR 22s and M&P compact 22s would be flying off the shelves. You wouldn't be able to buy them. The FBI is the top law enforcement agency in the country, and so what they say carries a lot of weight. Now, really quickly, with the recent atrocity debacle that Director James Comey has put his agency through, which he should be fired or step down, he should resign. He let a Secretary of State off the hook who absolutely put you and I in danger and endangered the national security of the United States of America. Something that people in those positions are sworn to uphold and protect. And I think he's a coward. And so I don't know anymore about their credibility, We talked earlier about the 40 being developed by the FBI, and of course it was the greatest thing ever, supposedly. And now they're saying, well, the 9 suits our needs. Keep in mind, the FBI did not say the 9 was better than 40. It's more cost effective, more people shoot it better, follow-up shots, etc., etc. It didn't say the 40 was ineffective. So back on the credibility part, after this James Comey thing, guys, I don't trust anything the FBI says. I mean, like I said, they could come out and say the .22 long rifle is great. You're going to have a lot of people going, hey, the FBI said it. We know they test everything. I don't know. I don't know after this Hillary Clinton thing. There's obviously more politics at play there than the good of the agency and the protection of United States citizens. And that's all I'm going to say about that, though. I just don't know about their credibility anymore. So we drop down to the last, or the third bullet point here. Law enforcement, FBI, and military needs are not the same as a civilian. So I carry a pistol to protect human life in my everyday situation, which may be going to the grocery store, it may be just outside my home, it may be going to a fair, to a mall, something like that. Statistics tell us that civilian shootings generally, the rule of threes, 3 yards, 3 seconds, 3 rounds fired, okay? So I do not have to concern myself too much with follow-up shots at a target at 20, 30, or 40 yards with a pistol. Now, law enforcement, military, the FBI might have to. They may engage in a gunfight across the parking lot. Maybe pieing around the corner of a house and shooting into a backyard or a front yard, that type of thing. You have to understand what is good for their needs isn't necessarily good for yours and mine. So you guys have to, it's time to put your big boy pants on and understand your needs as a concealed carrier, which may change day to day or situation to situation. There may be days where carrying ball ammo is more adequate. You may want to carry something that penetrates glass a little better if you're going to be spending a lot of time in a vehicle. There are a lot of considerations you need to take as a civilian, and they're not always going to match what these law enforcement people do. Again, they can be exposed to longer shots and more potential targets. Now, that's not to say that you might not have to engage, 3 guys at one time down the road, but my point is we don't use the exceptions to make the rules. Generally, civilian gunfights are going to be a mugging, a holdup, a rape attempt, a carjacking, something like that. So gunfighting at 30 yards with a pistol for a civilian, good luck finding where that happens. It doesn't happen often, if ever. So moving along, there are physical laws in this universe, things that you and I can't control. And if you don't believe me, find a 3-story building and challenge the law of gravity and see how that one works out for you. The law of gravity is no different than physical laws, such as momentum. And when we take a look at 2 different size rounds in the 124 grain HST and the 165 grain Winchester PDX-1, you can see the size difference, and it's about 33%. So it's about 1/3 larger, the 40 is, than the 9mm in this situation. So when we take a look at that, we're looking at 2 projectiles moving the exact same speed. Due to the physical laws of momentum and physics, the 40 Smith & Wesson has the potential to do more damage than a 9mm. Now that's a law. I'm not saying the 9mm is not as good as the 40. I'm not saying that the 9mm is better than the 40. I'm saying those are both great rounds. Both great rounds, and they have their gifts. They do things very well, each of them. And one might be better in one situation versus another. It just depends on what you need. There is no man stopper in any round, contrary to what people say. We know that based on statistics. Law enforcement encounters where guys have been shot 12, 15, 16 times with a 45 ACP and still continue to fight. So don't count on your magic bullet theory, guys. Probably isn't going to happen. So along the same lines of 1/3 difference, let's look at this. Let's scale it up a little bit here. Let's take a look. If you guys have ever seen a Major League Baseball pitcher throw one of these little babies, little 9-inch baseball, 100 miles an hour, pretty scary to stand in the batter's box against that, especially if you took one in the ribs. Now we look at a 12-inch softball, okay? Major League Baseball pitcher throwing this baby at 100 miles an hour, hitting you in the ribs, is going to hurt also. Now, not from a pain perspective, but take a look at both of these projectiles, and you tell me if both of those are thrown at 100 miles an hour, this one hits you in the ribs, this one hits you in the ribs, this one, due to laws of momentum, energy dispersion by a larger projectile doing the same speed as a smaller one, it is physically impossible for this one to not deliver more energy, which creates more physical tissue damage in the human body. It is a law. You can't argue against it. Now again, I'm not saying that automatically makes the 40 better than the 9. I'm just throwing this out there because some of you guys don't believe the 40 delivers more energy and more potential to cause damage. It does. It has to. There's no way around it. It is a law. It is a physical law. And again, if you don't believe it, challenge the law of gravity. Let me know how that works. So we'll put those back. Guys, that pretty much sums that part of the video up, part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Comments are welcome as long as they're respectful. Let's exchange some information. I'm always open to that. I want to learn. I want to help you learn, and let's continue to grow in knowledge, our technique, our fundamentals. Let's shoot well. Let's encourage each other. And I've said before in my other videos, let's grow the gun community. Let's stop infighting. Let's exchange good, positive information and, make ourselves better every day. So you want to leave comments, feel free, leave them in the comment section. If you're respectful and if it's going to benefit the gun community, I will accept the comment. If it's not, I'm going to delete it. If you come at me as a jerk and you're disrespectful and totally just trying to blow me out of the water, or anybody else who believes anything the same or differently than you do, you'll be blocked, pure and simple. I don't want people like you commenting on my videos or even watching them. And to be honest, I don't like seeing trolls on other people's videos either that do the same thing. So let's keep it positive. Let's have a good discussion. And let's talk about why different rounds are good for different reasons. And I don't care if it's 357, 9mm, 40, 45, it doesn't matter. So we're going to move on to the range next, guys. And I'm going to show you how I choose what caliber works best for me in a normal civilian type situation. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks for watching.